I really hope that you enjoy atmospheric horror because you're in for a treat with this one. I've had my eye on REANIMAL since I first heard that it was announced. Created by the same team that made Little Nightmares 1 and 2. So while you're going to see some crazy similarities to the Little Nightmares franchise, just know that this is a completely original world and story, unrelated to the Little Nightmares universe. Now, it's important to point out, REANIMAL shares a visual narrative style, much like Little Nightmares. There is very little dialogue and no documents or collectibles that expand on the greater lore as such, so we'll be going over what is shown to us and theorizing its purpose. And there is some pretty interesting stuff here to sink our teeth into. So without further ado, let's get into it. Our opening scene shows us 4 children as we slowly descend down a well, with the 5th child appearing as the sky turns red. We awake with one of our main characters in a boat in the middle of the ocean, with only the sounds of seagulls, crashing waves, and the ocean buoy surrounding him. He manages to find a young girl in the water. This is his sister, who interestingly attacks him when she first awakens. After realizing what she's doing, she quickly stops, telling him that she thought he was dead, before asking where the others are. The young boy doesn't know as they look forward towards the mountains. Since it will be hard to see this from the in-game perspective, these are the siblings. The boy wears a sack on his head and body, with a cut near his face and a square drawn on his chest. But you might also notice the rope around his neck, something to keep note of since it will play a vital point in the main theory of the story. The girl wears a white dress with a one-eyed rabbit mask covering her upper half of her face, the siblings' head between the enormous mountain walls, just showing the sheer contrast in the size of these characters compared to the world around them. Near the exit, heading into the forest, there are naval mines, primarily used in war to destroy ships or submarines. The earliest versions of these mines date back to the 14th century in Imperial China, but the specific designs seen here are more akin to the ones used in World War I and II. We find our first building in the woods, with suitcases strewn around the beaches. Inside the building is working electronics, with a giant turbine still working as well, but the building itself is abandoned, disheveled, with many things scattered across the floor covered in dust. Upstairs, the siblings find another young child sitting in a vent. He states that he knew that they would come back, but warns them to leave while they still can. This child is nicknamed Hood, due to the hood covering his head, sporting a rain jacket and boots. The yellow rain jacket could be a subtle nod to the main character of Little Nightmares 1/6, a game that these developers also created. Nearby is a giant pipe below a broken bridge with a hole in it. All of the early signs so far between the abandoned facility, the naval mines, and dust-covered littered floors suggest that these kids are living within a time and a place ravaged by war. The hole in the bridge and the pipe is also a clear sign of some kind of aerial bomb that has come through the roof, but the time frame is unique. As I mentioned, the naval bombs suggest a time frame between the 1910s to 1940s, since the design was used in both World Wars. Yet we see a computer in the nearby office, which is working once we turn the power on, depicting 2 images, a circle and a triangle. But this computer and phone found on the desk are not actually around in the early 1900s. Instead, these designs are much closer to ones invented around the 1990s or even the 1980s at the very earliest. We head into the locker rooms and make a pretty disgusting discovery. What appears to be a human but hollowed out, like somebody removed his insides and bones, leaving only a skin-like suit. And in the bathroom are innards and body parts, which makes for a nice new head apparently. The siblings meet back up with Hood and head back outside. We see our first adult as he heads quickly into a nearby building. Outside the building are chairs overlooking a long drop into a crevasse. A person's body is sitting in one of the seats, and if you look closely enough, the entire bottom of this ditch is filled with bodies. We follow the adult into the bathroom and see that he has otherworldly levels of tool, almost twice the size of the doorframe. Not to mention, watching him squeeze himself through the hole in a body. My god, that is a thing of nightmares. The adult's nickname, by the way, is the Sniffer. A terrible nickname to say the least, but we'll find out why soon enough. After using a plunger, the siblings successfully pull out what was plugging up the toilet. It was another person, similarly hollowed out, while the corpse the Sniffer climbed through is actually bloated and discoloured, looking more akin to a body that has been left in water for a prolonged amount of time. The entire facility is filled with these skins, hung up like laundry on the pipes, shelves, and even inside suitcases, much like the ones on the beach, but These things are not the remains of the dead, they're actually alive, moving around much like snakes. The siblings escape the facility and use a handcar to travel further into the forest. I'll take a moment to point out that throughout the world, you can find these hidden areas, and in some of them is a coffin, and inside is a child cloaked in shadow. If you look closely, this child looks just like Hood. The siblings watch as the shadow version of him is shot in the head and disappears. I'll bring up when we find the rest of these going forward, but these give us a big clue about the story in which we will be getting into at the end. Afterwards, they find the remnants of a railroad filled with trains in those same skins, but now dormant. We hear a car pull up outside as the Sniffer enters the train looking for something. We see Hood escape out of one of the briefcases and flee the Sniffer, who we now see properly. He is large, skinny, and dragging his right foot, which is twisted and damaged. He has an elongated head with sunken eyes and a smile stretched unnaturally across his face. He moves like the skin creatures, on all fours. He chases the children as they flee across the train, stretched out across a huge ravine. Another clue that this world has been changed somehow. Wide ravines opening in areas they previously weren't, littering the surrounding landscape. The children are still being chased in the woods, running from the skins and jumping across the gaps until they end up deeper in the forest. Large trees, with skins scattered across their branches. In the background is the sound of an ice cream truck. I must say, a terrifying choice of vehicle for something that is pursuing children. The truck races to catch them, with Hood falling behind. It offers out an ice cream cone but quickly throws it away when it notices Hood isn't reaching for it, snatching him and taking him away. You can hear the ice cream song in the distance as he drives away. The kids find a nearby car and use it to break down a gate into an entire city. There are bodies scattered on the streets, but they appear to be almost like ash. The fissures in the ground continue to open up under the city, eating away at the streets and the buildings around them. But in stark contrast to the abandoned city, which is dark, destroyed and bleak, we can see the lights of a cinema, with the Sniffer dragging Hood into it, his ice cream truck parked nearby. The siblings check the truck and move it out of the way. It's out of fuel, and they must now find some. They head into the cinema, with everything quiet and dark, but with the subtle sound of a film being played in the theatre. Inside the theatre are tens of bodies, maybe even hundreds, seated watching a disturbing yet familiar film. 4 heads look down into a well, oddly similar to the opening sequence, with 5 rabbits jumping around a rotting apple and the killing of a lamb. The rest is pretty quick, so I'll slow it down for everyone. We see a rabbit and a fox writhing around, an apple filled with maggots, birds jumping from cliffs, and a row of people holding hands running through the forest. The same fox and rabbit and an empty space in the sand near the beach. The symbolism is pretty crazy at this part, but there is something I want to point out. If you get the collector's edition of the game, you get access to 2 special masks, a fox mask for the boy and a lamb mask for the girl. The Sniffer arrives, taking Hood through the cinema. We follow him outside the back and we see more skins littering the buildings, being hung up everywhere and placed into the trash. The Sniffer is inside a laundry room, ironing out some of the skins. He has the bloated bodies strung up above bathtubs and living versions of these things inside of cattle cages. The siblings manage to free Hood from one of these cages and return to the cinema, where the Sniffer is unable to find them and begins crawling through the body of a nearby bloater once again. When I saw him do this the first time, you could be mistaken in believing that there was a hole on the other side of the corpse on the wall, but this time suggests that there isn't actually anything behind the corpse. But the Sniffer is able to move around location to location using these bodies, almost as a means of transportation. The children leave the cinema and find the Sniffer using a children's bicycle, which looks horrifying, with his long arms and legs, but manage to hide from him. They head towards the gas station and refuel a canister. We now see properly the Sniffer's ability to use these bodies as tunnels almost. The skins around the city come alive as the children flee back to the ice cream truck and refill it and manage to escape the city. The Sniffer appears again in the forest, grabbing onto the ice cream truck and trying to crawl his way in. The siblings fight him off with weapons as he falls under the wheels of the truck. Unfortunately, due to the ravines in the ground, the children fall into one. We see the top of the well again with a small lamb down below. A red light appears as the lamb begins levitating and its bones begin cracking. The children awake again below the road, now on the beach, but the ice cream truck is completely totaled. And more importantly, the Sniffer presumably dead. They are near a huge dam, requiring them to open the doors. On the other side are more naval mines, nearby destroyed roads that have fallen into the water. The area leads to a supermarket, half submerged in water, but the food and items still lie in the shopping carts and shelves. It makes you wonder if whatever happened to this world happened in a near instant. We see another of those bloated corpses, but this time alive, drinking from a milk carton in the fridge before submerging itself underwater. We see yet another hole in the roof, presumably from an aerial bomb, before these things begin coming out of the vents and the children manage to get away as the supermarket exit explodes behind them. We do some exploring in the town, finding an old destroyed building with a man dead in his chair, filled with spears. We take some of them to help against the bloaters in the water and to clear the mines. It's here that we find yet another coffin, this time with a shadow version of the boy. He's being pulled up to his death, seemingly by a noose as the real boy lowers his head at the sight. The team head throughout the nearby hotel, submerged again with bloaters in the waters. I must say the atmosphere of this place is incredibly ominous. We can see yet another child running up above as we continue throughout to find him. We can see bloaters are eating at tables in the dining room, without much care in the world, until of course the kids put a spear through their back. We find the child once again above us as we get a glimpse at the very first animal, Abomination. This is a giant mutated seagull, a bit like a kaiju to be honest. It takes the child towards a lighthouse on the hill. Nearby in another hidden cave, we find another coffin. This shadow child, who looks much like the one that we just saw taken away, is seemingly blown up and killed. We get a glimpse of a war bunker sitting atop a hill. It's sporting an enormous cannon, certainly big enough to put a sizable hole through these seagull abominations. As it just so happens, there is another one sitting nearby blocking our path. Unfortunately, even though we've lined it up in our sights, there is no power to the cannon, so we need to find a solution. We head towards that lighthouse and see a giant cliff wall face and some war bunkers that have been built into the cliff face. There is a ladder taking them to the top, and at the top is actually the most serene sight that we've seen so far. A strange splash of colour in an otherwise bleak and colourless world so far. The kids run through the fields of flowers, arriving at an enormous barn. Inside are pigs, some dead, but most are alive and well, and thankfully, friendly. At the end of the barn, however, is a giant oversized pig abomination that is enjoying eating its own kind. It gives the children a quick and stern warning to leave, something that I have no problem with personally. The kids head towards the lighthouse on the cliff, and at the top is a bird's nest, which is interestingly keeping a child locked away in a bird cage, which is symbolic in and of itself. The abomination chases us through the lighthouse and across the bridges. They flee back to the barn as it smashes through the roof. The children throw a torch and quickly shut the doors, leaving the two mutated animals to burn inside. I should take the time to introduce our fourth child. They're called Bandage, covered in facial bandages, much like somebody who has survived an explosion or possibly fire. The children take rest at a bus stop, with the girl asking her brother if she knows why they are here. He replies that he doesn't have any idea before the light turns red and the young girl winces in pain. We see the sheep again at the bottom of the well, transforming, mutating. The young girl snaps out of it as the children are clearly scared. A bus arrives and they take a seat on the bus, with all of its windows broken and a dead driver who is also made of shadow behind the wheel. They arrive at their location, this time an orphanage. The front door's closed with beds left outside to decay in the weather. The kids get in near the clock and find numerous children now turned to ash, with many reaching out towards the light. They're also in the hallways. But not all of these kids are actually dead. We can find still many that are actually alive as they attempt to attack the kids. The cafeteria even has a throne that's been made, with one of them wearing a crown. One of these children near the window has been covered in sunlight and has been hardened, much more durable than others. Inside the theatre room, the children made of dust have another child hostage as we see them offer a pig as sacrifice to some ungodly creature below. It is here that we can find another coffin, this time a shadow child with a bucket on his head. He's thrown from a cliff face. We return to the theatre room as they attempt to send the child down to the creature, but the siblings manage to save them and pull them back up. Well, momentarily. The children made of dust manage to subdue the siblings and send them down the hole as well. Below the orphanage is a tunnel system filled with school buses and cars. We get a brief glimpse of this new abomination as they traverse this area of the city, over the crumbling ground. They manage to find the child sent down here before them, our fifth friend. This kid is called Bucket, who has a bucket over his head and overalls, who now join us as we attempt to untie ourselves. We find the pig that was taken earlier, terrified and cowering in a corner. You can actually comfort the poor thing, which I take the time to do. Kindness is hard to come by in this world. In the next room, Bucket is taken by the Abomination nicknamed Mother. It is spider-like with its legs, but has a gaping hole in its face, certainly unlike any animal I've ever seen. The kids successfully flee but find themselves inside of its lair, filled with what has to be millions of potatoes. It chases them across the side of the orphanage, and attacks them in the bunk room assisted by the Dust Children. After many spears, the siblings kill the creature and go into its stomach to retrieve Bucket. Ugh. The children begin to leave the orphanage, but we now find soldiers outside who are patrolling the area. Now, you would be mistaken to think that these guys are friendly to the children. They aren't. And while they may have human-like proportions, their faces are distorted, almost supernatural in appearance. The kids hide in the back of one of these soldiers' trucks as Bucket asks the sister why they came back for them. The sister quickly begins wincing again as the lights turn red. We see the lamb, now enormous in size, climbing up the well before the young girl snaps out of it once again. The lights continue flashing red as the truck quickly tips over. The 5 of them are now inside the war bunker built into the cliff face from earlier. It's here that we're able to reactivate the power to the bunker gun. As they do, an aerial package is delivered with new rounds for the cannon. It seems like the military is still keeping an eye out around the area. We head down to the bunker and take a new round and reload the cannon, before sending our Seagull Abomination friend a new welcoming gift. It screams in pain, the sound almost deafening. As the kids return to the boat and head into the city, we can hear enormous explosions as we get a glimpse of a battleship. This thing is absolutely enormous. I mean, the size of a damn skyscraper. We head inside the ship and find yet another mutated creature, this time a whale, sitting inside the ship. Just to put into perspective just how huge this thing really is. Its eye is missing, and the kids decide to look for a new one. Thankfully, there is some kid-sized diving gear nearby, and we head down into the ocean. We can see the streets and buildings below on the ocean floor, now completely submerged in water. Not to mention a mutated horse abomination with an eyeball that we can use, so we take it. It is actually alive, and while the siblings flee through the buildings, the naval mines come in handy as it explodes the building down below onto the creature, and they can begin heading back to the surface. Well, you would think. It chases the siblings up, crushing the cage in the process, but thankfully they manage to get out and replace the whale's eye. We see how mutated this creature actually is, but thankfully it isn't hostile, instead choosing to leave back into the ocean, and now the way is clear through the ship. We drive through, once again seeing this absolute hellscape that's been left of the world. Flyers begin falling down as the children discuss how they wish that it could all just go back to how it was before. They pray for a way out. More tremors begin happening as the children finally reach the end of the line for their boat. We can hear the sound of bombs above as dust rattles from the walls and roof. The lights turn red again as the young girl falls to the ground. We see this lamb abomination, now too large for the well to even contain, moving through the tunnels as its bones break to make space. The young girl begins vomiting and we see the lamb. My God. Hood and Bucket run for it, while the brother grabs his sister onto his back and they continue through the building. We see the lamb monstrosity dragging Hood into the darkness as his screams fill the room, and then there's nothing but silence. There are numerous soldiers scattered around, dead as they reunite with Bucket and get their bearings. The sounds of explosions and gunfire fill the city as the children run through the trenches. It's honestly like being thrown into World War I. Oddly though, when they find soldiers, they're all one by one, choosing not to fight anymore. It isn't long before they find a soldier posted up on a mounted machine gun, putting out fire as they run across. The lamb appears again, crawling and cracking down the trenches. They jump into a bunker, but it's too late for Bucket, who is dragged out the opening in the jaws of the lamb. This terrifies Bandages as he runs on ahead. Below the bunker is a medical hospital filled with soldiers who chase the siblings, but with grenades in their hands, all of them missing legs. It's here that we find the final coffin, this one containing a rabbit. After a narrow escape, we find Bandages again, but the lamb has already found him before us, deciding to eat him before breaking the wall and running outside. The mood is even more solemn as the siblings continue, seeing a soldier playing the piano before being killed by a sniper. This same sniper follows the siblings throughout the battlefield. We see 5 posts with 4 soldiers on them, all with circles painted on their chest, but one place is oddly missing. Outside is the lamb Abomination, which is now mutated even further, now sporting humanoid legs and numerous arms. It's feasting on the dead soldiers before climbing its way out. The siblings manage to track down the sniper's location, using a rocket launcher to bring the clock tower down and eliminate the sniper. But the worst of the battlefield is yet to be seen. The World War I and II parallels continue. Through the muddy terrain, bodies of soldiers litter the ground, as surviving soldiers simply walk aimlessly back. Explosions continue and the sounds of creatures eating fill the space around them. If you thought the sniper was bad, the army now has a tank aimed at the siblings, which requires a well-placed grenade to nullify. But now, they have something fitting to use against the lamb creature. The demonic entity continues to chase them throughout the battle-torn town, taking tank shot after tank shot. It turns the tank over, attempting to rip them out of it, but in the end they manage to wound it and fall down below with it. As the siblings look on to see if it's dead, it quickly snatches the brother, eating him and killing him, now growing into a complete monstrosity. The young girl stands alone, facing the creature before being eaten herself. Everything turns red for the girl as we see a glimpse of the brother, hood, bucket and bandages sitting in a drawn circle, with a book nearby and a small piece of wood in the middle of them. Each of them cut their hands and drop their blood onto the wood. The young girl is now inside the monstrosity as she calls out for them. The insides slowly expand to make way for her. We see the other children in a barn, but when the girl goes inside after them, all that is left is a dead rabbit. The doors close behind her as the 5 rabbit drawings are surrounding her on the floor. The other children laugh as you hear a thud and everything goes black. We now see the brother dragging his sister towards the well, with the other 3 surrounding it with a dead rabbit. More sheep surround the group as the lights turn red once again and the sky rains in blood. We now see the opening sequence again, but with an orange-red sky, as the brother, hood, bucket and bandages look down. The sister is at the bottom until she begins floating and bones begin breaking. A final scene shows the well as a black ooze-like liquid fills and overflows from the well. And that ends REANIMAL. Now let's get straight into theories, and starting with the run of events that lead to this point. We see the brother, bucket, bandages and hood performing a ritual or a blood pact of some kind. A book is nearby them, and the surrounding area with the bunk beds suggests that this could be the orphanage that we saw earlier. Also, in stark contrast to one another, our opening scene depicts the same 4 looking down a well, with a clear sky above them, before the sister joins the frame at the last minute, looking down. I believe that this is showing the moment the 4 children found a suitable spot to enact the next part of their ritual, with the sister not realizing what's actually going on. The kids then kill a rabbit. It could have been the sister's pet, or maybe it was needed as part of the ritual. It's hard to say, but they use this rabbit to lure the sister into the barn where they knock her out cold. The kids then drag the sister, along with the rabbit, to the same well that they scouted earlier, with Hood holding onto a knife and presumably finishing the job when they arrived. They throw her down the well, presumably finishing the ritual. As a result of this ritual, it seems on the surface that it brought horror to the world, with unnatural creatures and animal abominations, allowing either a new world to pass into this one, through the well as some kind of gate or portal, or allowing a demonic entity of some kind to enter. The 4 faces of the children can be seen looking down into the well, with that red sky above them looking down at their work. We see throughout the world that some kind of significant flood has occurred, with many cities submerged. It makes me wonder if the well was actually the source of this surge of water, causing the floods and creatures to pour into the world, which also in turn caused the sister, now changed, to reappear in the waters where her brother finds her later. Remember that she attacks him when she first sees him, before saying that she thought that he was dead before asking about the others. I also want to point out the significance of the number 5. It reoccurs constantly throughout the story. For example, there are 5 total children, 5 rabbits shown in the barn and on the film. In the very first scene where the boy is on the boat by himself, he drives by exactly 5 buoys in the water, finding his sister on the 5th one. Each one of these buoys, by the way, flashing the same red light that we've seen in relation to the lamb and the sister. There are 5 posts with soldiers on them, all sporting circles on their chests resembling the same circle the kids had around them during the ritual, all taking into account that one of these 5 posts had a soldier missing, which would make sense since the sister was a victim of the ritual, not a perpetrator. There are also 5 coffins to be found around the world, each representing a child in the group, and the final one being the rabbit that was killed in the barn and used as sacrifice. There are also 5 rabbit statues to be found throughout, and 5 different animal abomination species that were shown to us throughout the game: the seagull, the pig, the whale, the horse, and the lamb. I'm not counting the mother or the sniffer in this, since they aren't technically animals. Then we get to the timeline issue. Now, this is a fictional world, so it could easily be a mix of everything, but I find the use of objects throughout the world from different time periods quite strange. The computers and electrical devices are from the 1990s, yet the soldiers' uniforms, weapons and trenches are more akin to something you would see in World War I in the 1910s. And then you add on the naval mines, tanks and battleships that date to the 1940s, World War II, and then you add on the handcar seen earlier, which actually predates the 20th century. It feels like whatever has happened to the world, presumably through the actions of this group of children, has almost broken time in some way. For example, there are children at the orphanage literally frozen in time, unable to move. The coffins also add an interesting twist to the plotline. Each of the coffins show a different death for the ones involved in the ritual. The brother is hung, while Hood is shot, Bucket is thrown down a cliff, and Bandages is blown up. The rabbit is the only thing that doesn't die, instead it runs away. This poses a different theory. What if the lamb is symbolic of the sister's anger, something that builds as each of the children are found, that were responsible for her death, growing until she can't hold it any longer? The lamb goes on to target everybody except her brother until the very end, and once they're all gone, she's left alone, consumed by her own anger. And it does pose the question, since the sister does mention at the beginning when the brother found her that she believes him to be dead. Why would she think that? Is it possible that the brother, Bucket, Bandages and Hood were killed for their parts or their roles within the ritual, in the same manner that we saw their shadow counterparts? Or is the sister in some kind of time loop, believing her brother dead because she literally watched him die to the lamb, but after being consumed she must relive the events that led up to it? There is also a secret ending if you find the 5 coffins, where small creatures come out of the well, finding the sister down below. They help her float as the water begins filling the well. This could also be showing that there's some kind of regularity to these sacrifices, that the sister is not the first sacrifice for these creatures to come and collect. While it would be great to have definitive answers, speculation is all that we have at the moment. I would absolutely love to hear your guys' theories on what you guys think this story might mean, and if you picked up on any things that maybe I missed. If you made it to the end of the video, write lamb in the comments down below so I know, and remember to like and subscribe for more lore content in the future. Until next time guys, peace.